Necromunda Hired Gun. What a weird game. Summarizing this game into one sentence is nearly impossible, as every pro has a con along with it, and every feature has an asterisk on its execution. Since I laid eyes on this fast-paced, single-player, first-person Warhammer 40k game, I was intrigued. It clearly took great inspiration from its contemporaries from Bethesda's camp, but was set in one of the most interesting universes in all of fiction. What could go wrong? Or rather, as with most Warhammer 40k video games, what could go right? So, as someone who knows a little about the Warhammer 40k universe and is terrible at first-person shooters, how did I like it? Well, you know, that is to say, well, let's just start slow and talk about the visuals. The game is, to put in a word, incredible to look at. Okay, that was more than one word. But anyways, most of the NPC models are flawed to say the least, but in the heat of combat, this is rarely a concern. The set pieces look absolutely incredible, and the way light dances around rooms, and the way light is sometimes unable to, is amazing to look at. The weapons look great too. The rugged look of the early weapons contrasts well with the sleeker guns you acquire later in the game, as well as the awesome particle effects on the energy-based weapons, which dominate against higher level enemies. The texture work isn't always the best, especially when it comes to some of the metal structures, but on the whole, it typically isn't noticeable during gameplay. Accompanying said gameplay is a derivative but also very fun soundtrack by Oliver Zuccaro. It's certainly similar to Mick Gordon's efforts on the Doom soundtracks, and at times feels kinda cheap, but when it works, it really works. Some tracks to check out from it would be 32, Warp Infused, Oil and Rust, and Hunter v Hunter. Other sounds in the game don't fare so well though. Most of the sound effects are bland and none of the weapons sound memorable in the least. The voice work isn't exceptional either. Having played as both the male and female main character, I can tell you to avoid the male at all costs. Worst of all though is the mixing of the audio. Enemy weapons make almost no sound at all, as their cyclical dialogue is screamed directly into your ears. Some enemies just don't make any sound at all, like hammer-wielding Goliaths who can jump insane distances and one-shot you on the higher difficulties, or Ogryns who can lob molten earth at you from a distance who can also one-shot you. Silently, from completely out of view. Lovely. And if you are able to hear these guys coming, good on ya. But no human being on Earth can hear the square root of jack whenever anyone talks to you over the radio. The entire game audio goes to maybe 25% just so you can hear some uninspired voice acting over the radio. Speaking of gameplay, let's get to it, as it's easily the most important part of games like this. Speaking solely on the base movement, as well as the advanced movement such as grappling, sliding, double jumping, and sliding, the game is damn near a masterpiece. The system is extremely sensitive and responsive, and almost nothing feels sluggish in the slightest. Think Shadow Warrior 2, but even more snappy. The gunplay complements this very well too. Apart from some stiff animations on some of the weapons, most of the time, the movement and gunplay complement each other perfectly. But fuck if everything else around it isn't significantly worse or downright broken. Rarely does the game ever throw an enemy at you that doesn't just blindly run at you, or try to blindly run at you and get stuck behind a wall. Sure, the movement is absolutely awesome, but what's the point in having such a great system when the AI is ripped straight from GoldenEye? And the bosses... what an absolute joke. The most uncreative, mind-numbing bullet sponge garbage you've ever seen. The second to last boss isn't bad, but can you honestly tell me you had fun with the final boss, the Goliath, or god forbid the Orlok boss? Just no. They're just run-of-the-mill enemies with a coat of paint and 100 times the health. And no, I'm not kidding. Oh, don't worry though, you have the stim pack system to save the day for you. Essentially, stim packs will recharge your shield and health to full when you die, letting you keep playing exactly where you left off. This works well in a vacuum, but for some reason, in every boss room other than the final one, there's a shop station where you can top up on stim packs all you like during gameplay. So you can just vomit bullets unintelligibly into the boss and just keep buying stim packs as you die. Seriously, I must have died like 20 times on the Orlok boss, but it was fine because I could just keep buying stim packs by the shop. Not to mention that even if you run out of money, you can always just return to the main hub, do some side missions for some cash, and start right back where you were at the boss, not even needing to start the level from the start or even halfway through. Discovering just how exploitable this system was made my second playthrough on a higher difficulty an entire hour shorter. And it's not like these side missions are anything to write home about either. Once again, the idea of procedurally generated is a synonym for trash in video games. All these side missions are slices of the pre-existing levels with alternative objectives. You know, really inspiring ones like kill all the things, collect all the things, and most impressively, defend all the things. Also aiding in the shorter playtime was knowing where to look for these hilariously bad scavenger hunt-esque portions of missions where you have to find these fucking batteries for generators or whatever. This happens not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times, I think. You have to stop everything you're doing and run around like a moron looking for glow sticks. What a way to grind a fast-paced game to a halt and still only clock in at maybe 5 hours for a first playthrough. I suppose now is a good time to mention the loot in this game. My original draft for this video didn't even mention it, because it's simply forgettable and unnecessary. All it does is add chance to a system that has no need for chance. Just let me complete missions and buy and upgrade weapons for myself. Trust me, it's more rewarding than arbitrarily happening upon a weapon I have no business using yet. This is a compounding issue given the length of the game, which was 5 hours for me on my first playthrough, so a few lucky or unlucky drops could make an unnecessary and arbitrary change in difficulty as well as playtime. Well, at least this level design isn't as big a letdown as your pet in the game, the Mastiff. This giant, upgradable, cute dog is a shining example of how god-awful this game's AI is. I wanted to give the dog a chance, I mean, who wouldn't? And I was upgrading him through most of my playthroughs, but it just felt like it was a complete waste when this dumbass just runs straight past hordes of enemies only to stand still playing a 5-second bite animation on a target I can't even reach. Speaking of upgrades, there's actually a very expansive upgrade tree here, but once you get the lay of the land, it starts to come apart a bit, and you realize you only need to upgrade the best abilities once, and then focus the rest of your money into base stats like health and health regen, and none into that stupid fucking dog. But worse than any of that, by a country mile, nay, a multi-dimensional mile, is the story. I know this won't peeve everyone, however, as some of my favorite games are Soma, Alan Wake, and Metal Gear Solid 3, you can probably assume that stories tend to matter to me. And oh lord, what the hell even is this? I don't even... How do you write something this paper thin and pointless? I played through my fair share of both bad and downright boring stories, but no game I've ever experienced in my life has had a worse story than this game. Maybe worse presentation and voice acting, sure, but still, the most descriptive, over-explained synopsis of the story would barely crack a single tweet limit. I won't spoil it word for word, but it's literally, kill one boss from each of the major groups, the guy who was clearly going to betray you betrays you, the end. Awful. It wouldn't matter so much to me if they weren't in the 40k universe, you know, one of the most explored and rich universes in all of fiction. I mean, is this really the best you got? You couldn't call in one random 40k fan to draft you up something meatier? Come on. I know I spent more time on the negatives than I have on the positives in this video, but I do want to be clear, on the whole, I like the game. I had a good time on the hard difficulty, but I would skip normal as it's way too easy, and old school as all of the game's issues come to a head full stop and really prevent enjoyment as you get robbed of a fair fight every other death. The game is fun as hell for a good amount of its runtime, but regardless of your takeaway, you're guaranteed to feel less fulfilled than if you'd played any of its contemporaries, from either a triple, double A, or even on the indie side of gaming. To me, this is largely due to a lack of any meaningful characters or story beats, but the unintelligent AI make the game feel almost like a shooting gallery, and that certainly doesn't help. It's a shame, and I really can't recommend this game for more than $15. Maybe $20 if you're really itching for some fast-paced gameplay. That's all I have on Necromunda Hired Gun for now, though. Thanks for watching.